Hey, it is I, Lisa Loving, setting this up. 3, 2, 1. We are live. I'm Lisa Loving. I am the author of Street Journalist, Understand and Report the News in Your Community. And right now, we're firing up this live stream. It's day 3 of my How to Write Your Rant challenge. Write your rant. I know I'm kind of waiting to make sure that all the bells and whistles are ringing and screaming. This is a live scream. I'll try not to scream too loud. So again, I'm Lisa Loving. I'm the author of a book. It's a do-it-yourself book about journalism, but this is a 5-part live stream about how to create an opinion piece, how to write your rant, basically. And I'm broadcasting live from my kitchen table here in Portland, Oregon. Want to welcome people all over the world who might be joining me all over the United States for real. And I'm not crystal clear when there's been a time when more people might want to rant, as a matter of fact. So this is live, but it's being recorded and it's going to be stored on Facebook and also on YouTube. But in Facebook, it's part of my community. It's the Street Journalist community. So I'm going to be probably sending you an invitation to join that little booger. And I really, really want to encourage people to reach out and ask me questions, share your work with me. I'm so excited just to give some of the tools of journalism and writing and critical analysis to you, who are some of the best and brightest people, actually, that I've ever heard of. I briefly want to say my website is streetjournalist.com. That's street-journalist.com. On Facebook, I'm Lisa Loving. You might be watching me here. On Twitter, I'm Lisa Loving. And on Instagram, I'm L Loving. So watch out for that one. And again, all these videos are also being stored on a YouTube channel. And it's called, can you imagine what it's called? It's called Lisa Loving. It's the Lisa Loving channel. My Facebook group is Media for the People, with the number 4. And I'm piffling a little to make sure that my sister and everybody jumps on here with us now so that we can all be live together. Also, if you hear the dog barking, you know that's Riley, the news hound. I've got his hat right here. He's off running around. If you hear the cat barfing, it's totally okay. We're at my house. It's the kitchen table. It's life. It's what happens. So I want to jump into this. This is day 3 of the How to Write Your Rant challenge. And the other days, we talked about how to lay the groundwork for your rant. And also the last segment was called, what is your point? Because, as you know, you may have listened to or watched my video of the overview of this whole process. Really, the key of writing a rant is to hone in on what is your point. And the main point that you're making is the spine of everything that you're putting together. And I'm assuming that you want to engage other people. You don't want to just salad shooter your opinion at people. So the process that I've come up with is designed for you to share your thoughts and share your ideas, and also take in the ideas of other people. We talked about that in the last segment. So right now, we're talking about backing up your main point with facts. Talked about it a little bit yesterday. What is information? What is a fact? Because it might seem obvious, but what is information actually can change over time. What is a fact can change over time. As we are here in a global pandemic in which the United States government is being accused of not responding to the need for people to be tested for the coronavirus, I think it's possible that, as I hear some people saying, I don't know anyone who's infected, that is a change, right? So that's the perfect example of what we're going to talk about today a little bit. How to back up your opinion with facts. The first part of this process, you gather together a bunch of background material. We talked about how to make a 5-point search on the internet. You can go check out day 1 to really do a deeper dive into that. And we asked ourselves, what is the most important point of information that you had, right? So, but today we're gonna take another step, and what I'm asking you, what we're going to talk about today is, what's the most important piece of information that supports your overall burning point. Because you want to build walls, you want to build a structure that's supported by real information. And I think I talked about some person that I saw on Facebook this week who was drawing links from a website called Screaming Weasel or something like that. Weasel screaming, screaming weasel. What is information? What is a fact? And today I want to talk a little bit about how you kick the tires on that vehicle to make sure that this information is accurate in some way, right? Or I have to say too, in my book, Street Journalist, there's a whole chapter about how to sort through information and how to figure out where the information came from. Because as you're looking at where the information came from that you're talking about, you don't just want to look up information that supports what you already think, right? There's a lot more about that in my book too. And we talked about this in the last segment. That's called heuristics, HEURISTICS. Heuristics are the brain farts that are that we all have, that basically control how we take in information. In some ways, sometimes we take in information sideways. I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I just want to look for something that supports my argument, and that thing might not be accurate. So watch out for that. So wherever you are, you've already come up with your main point, and maybe your main point is something like, everybody should be sheltering in place and stop going to the playground and don't go playing basketball. I saw a picture of literally, it was truly a full basketball court about 2 days ago on social. So maybe your big point is to make sure that people isolate in place or what have you, together in your background and test it. Make sure that it's accurate. I just want to say, one of my favorite kinds of supporting statements to go with your main point is a killer fact. Killer facts. A wonderful colleague of mine came up with that term. A killer fact is a piece of information that is just so compelling. Here comes my dog. Here comes Riley. He's going to bark. Anyway, there's Riley running in the background. So anyway, I'm just going to wait a second for the dog to stop barking, because this is a live stream. This is our lives. This is how, this is life. This is what happens. But anyway, a killer fact is a piece of information that is so compelling that it stops people cold. And as an example of that, a lot of times we're sort of bored by information. We think we know it all. But some few years ago, I was arguing with somebody on social media, and they suggested that actually it was an argument about sexual assault. And this was a conservative male human being who basically was saying, no, millions of men have been raped. Men are absolutely victimized by rape. There could even be almost as many men sexually assaulted as there are women in our society. And I couldn't believe that. My head just exploded. But then I remembered that the federal government had actually come out with a report about prison rape, prison assault. And as you may already know, the United States incarcerates more people currently than all other nations combined. So when I started looking at reports from the Department of Justice, there's a wonderful organization called RAINN, also RAINN, that compiles information. There was a lot of information, a lot of statistics about how many male human beings in our society and around the world have also been sexually assaulted. I had never even thought about that before. So, this argument, I had to back off my position and learn more about the research that's going on about prison assaults and how male human beings are victimized sexually. Anyway, that was just one example of a killer fact, right? Now, let's go back to, you have your main point and you're coming up with supporting statements for that. Like, how do you figure out whether the supporting statements are accurate or what kind of supporting statements are even worth having, right? So I love statistics. What kind of information makes good supporting statements? I want to say statistical information, policy statements. If you want to argue about which elected official is doing what in response to what burning social issue, that would be policy statements. Events can make remarkable supporting statements, things that have happened, right? And that leads me to history. Sometimes historic events, history of something can also make an important supporting statement. quotes, actually, direct quotes from people. What did the president say last night? What did Barack Obama say about being, if he was president in the time of Nixon, he would have been a moderate Republican. You know what I'm saying? Like there's quotes. A lot of quotes can make amazing supporting statements. Depends on what your main statement is. And even when it comes to quotes, just in the past 72 hours, I've seen a lot of quotes coming out in tweets, right? Social media posts documenting events. Right. I'm seeing a great big argument on Twitter right now about whether Joe Biden actually encouraged elderly voters to go to the polls in this week's primaries. In violation of federal government and even local government, directives not to congregate in groups of more than, I think the president said 10 people maybe this week. And, a lot of governors have said 50 people. And many people have called for the primary polling locations in, I believe it's in parts of the South and the Midwest as well, to be shut down because it's not safe. And then we've seen a lot of stories, and we've seen documentation too on social media of the polling places not even having people show up to staff them. So there's an argument going on about whether that constitutes voter suppression. So if you want to argue that, what has happened, the Democratic National Committee's response to the coronavirus epidemic in places where people have been calling for fewer people to congregate, you're going to be looking for information. You might be looking for quotes from people who were there. You might be looking for, you could even look for like television news reporting with videotapes of how many people have been turned away, how many people have gone in there, how many people have congregated or lined up even outside these polling places. So these are things that make really great supporting statements. But see, you've gone online, you've gathered this stuff. I was looking at this tweet that was supposedly something that Joe Biden said, and it really, I think it's valid. It's an accurate tweet. He's basically saying, his campaign was saying, if you're healthy, wash your hands and go vote, or vote and wash your hands. And a lot of people are really infuriated about that. But it is documented in a tweet. So tweets actually are a document. That's a public document. Some of these things, if you are, if you're gearing yourself up for a rant, you're gearing yourself up to be outraged about something, I want to remind you that when social media, when it comes to social media, Twitter especially, but also Facebook and Instagram, people will delete that stuff. If somebody has said something outrageous, they will often go on and delete it. So if you are capable, if you have the skills to use your computer, if you see something like that, I just want to strongly encourage you to take a screenshot, an image of that as it happens, just to keep it, to bolster your argument. Because sometimes, again, it's like, what is information changes, what is true changes, and what people say in public, sometimes they want to hide it. Right. So I'm just putting that out. So now let's talk a little bit about how to fact check this stuff. I have a few places to send you. All right. Because fact checking, there's tools for it. There's tips for it. There's a lot of common sense. And there's a whole part of fact checking in my book. I really think you should get my book. But I want to just give you a few resources, because sometimes there's information out there that you just assume it's true because of where it came from. And it's not always true. Did you see the article that was in the Washington Post last year about how cell phones cause horns? For real. And it was based on some kind of scientific research that scientists in Australia did. If you go to that page, if you did a web search for Washington Post cell phone horns, you'll see there's a disclaimer at the top of that story now saying that the people that did this research did not use sufficient resources to document their findings or something like that. So keep your eye on stuff like that. So what are some great resources to check your background information, to fact check it, or to make sure that there's veracity to it, keeping in mind that almost anything can turn out to be bullshit later, right? One time my dad was in the Vietnam War. He was an air traffic controller on an aircraft carrier. He was actually in the Gulf of Tonkin, right? And some people will tell you that, I could be wrong, but I think that it's been shown that the Gulf of Tonkin is where the United States really became entrenched in the Vietnam War at the jump. one of a number of steps in which that happened. And that it was perhaps something that we triggered, our own government triggered. So my father was on that aircraft carrier in the 60s when this happened. And before he passed away, he said to me once, I think we started that. I think we did that. So even though he may not have thought that in the 60s when it happened, these things change over time. So how do you do the best that you can to make sure that your information has veracity, right? I'm going to suggest actually a really great source, and you've heard of it already. It's called Snopes.com. One of the Snopes guys now, one of the Snopes editors lives here in Oregon, where I live, and you can actually meet that guy. He doesn't come out a lot. But Snopes actually it's literally a fact-checking website that's been around for decades. And it started out as an idea that some folks had. And now, especially in the current age, it has taken on a life of its own. And they have added more staff. It's a really interesting resource. And I know that there are right-wing people. There are certain people who think that it's fake. So there's always going to be that. That was such a cynical thing to say. But there probably is always going to be somebody who doesn't want to believe facts. Hate to say that. Anyway, Snopes.com is a great first place to go. There's another really fantastic organization called First Draft News. Their website is firstdraftnews.com. They've got people all over the world, multiracial, multilingual resources for people. They actually just did a United States tour of how to fact check information in elections. If you go to firstdraftnews.com, they have tons of tools for you to check all kinds of things, even the veracity of a tweet, right? And so they lump it together by subject matter. They got a lot going on around the coronavirus right now, but their elections integrity stuff is fantastic. And look for a little PDF that was called something like Toolkit, your elections toolkit. There is so much in there. You should definitely become familiar with firstdraftnews.com. And lastly, because I'm getting ready to wrap up already, BuzzFeed, right? BuzzFeed's column, The Fake Newsletter, is put out by their news media editor, Craig Silverman, who is a genius of fact-checking, okay? It's done by Craig Silverman and reporter Jane Litvinenko. And it calls out media bullshittery of all kinds. Craig Silverman, based in Canada, you should follow him on social media. You should pay attention to everything he does. Craig Silverman is a genius because actually the first time that I ever heard of him, and I made friends with him on Twitter, did you know that there are real people that don't use computers sometimes on social media? But anyway, his claim to fame originally was that all he did was a column about fact-checking, about corrections. Right? They had a reporter in South America that was falsifying all his coverage, right? Which is fascinating. Craig Silverman. So definitely check him out. Craig Silverman, the fake newsletter. Fake newsletter comes out regularly, and you can sign up to get that. And there's genius stuff in there. First Draft News also has a newsletter. You can sign up and get it regularly. I very much recommend it because I think that my goal in doing all of these trainings is to encourage you to pick up the tools of journalism because we need you, right? I don't think I talk about this in every segment I do, but you may not realize that our news media is collapsing. And I had a really gnarly moment this morning because I was looking at, I live in the state of Oregon and it's the Arkansas of the West Coast. It is. We only have 4 million people, a little more than 4 million people in the whole entire state. More people live in the LA metro area than in the entire state of Oregon. Please don't move here, by the way. You're going to think, whatever. I'm not going there. But I was realizing that of all of the media outlets that are impacted by the coronavirus, the Associated Press, right, only has 2 staff reporters in their building. And my wonderful colleagues at the Portland Mercury, they laid off half their staff now, and because their funding stream dried up because all the clubs closed. So we need you. I cannot say that enough. Okay, so I'm wrapping up. I really want to encourage people to. So we started out with You're making your strong statement of your rant, that the whole main point that it's about. And today we're looking at how to come up with supporting statements. We're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. The supporting statements that support your rant and hopefully educate people. And now you've got a few tools to make sure. Go to my Facebook page, Media for the People, the number 4, and reach out to me. Write out, what your rant is. I would love to hear more about it. And you're always welcome to, encouraged to contact me. I never get tired of hearing about what people are doing. So again, I'm Lisa Loving, street journalist. Understand and report the news in your community is my book. This is how to write your rant. This is the How to Write Your Rant Challenge. And we're going to keep having these every day at 6 p.m. until Friday night. And hopefully somebody out there is going to start ranting in a way that's really, really impactful and changes something, please. So Lisa Loving, that's my dog, Riley. He's the news hound. Streetjournalist.com, that's street-journalist.com. On Facebook, I am Lisa Loving. My group is Media for the People. On Twitter, Lisa Loving, and on Instagram, L Loving. I just really thank you for being here. And these are very weird times. I want everyone to be safe. So thank you so much. Take care, and I'll be back here tomorrow.